So welcome everyone. Is there any particular question you may have concerning your practice? Now's the time to ask. Do you have a question?
So there is no shortcut to make the mind stop thinking?
Say it again, please.
It's like when it keeps circling
Yes.
and thinking this and that.
Yes.
Is there any other shorter way to stop?
Okay, so is there a shortcut to make the mind stop thinking? That's the question. There's probably some of you have been wondering that, whether there is a shortcut to make the mind stop thinking. I don't know. Yes and no. It's really different for everyone, the experience. But there are some general paths or doors, and you could try either one of those doors to enter silence, to enter a state in which there is no thinking. The way we describe thinking here would be just talking to yourself in your own head. That I would say is thinking. Okay? So for the purpose of this, for meditation, that is good enough. We can say that thinking is talking to yourself in your own head. So one possible door to let thoughts come to an end is to focus on the gap that arises in between those thoughts. So if you hear me talk right now, there's always little breaks in between, little pauses, right? What do you think about during those pauses? Where does your mind go right now? What is it doing when I stop talking? Like in between now and now. Were you thinking a lot? No, right? Now just imagine that the voice that you're hearing from me would be the voice that's talking in your own head. Now I'd like you to direct your attention to that gap. Whenever I speak, notice the gaps. That is enough. You don't need to do anything more with those gaps. Just become aware of them. So like you're listening to those gaps. It's almost like that. Isn't it the case then that as you're listening to those gaps, that the mind loses interest in the words, naturally. And as it loses interest in those words and it's more interested in the silence in the gaps, because now that's what we're exploring, right? The words slowly fade. Why are the words there in your head? Simple answer to that. Because you're interested in them. If you weren't interested in your thoughts, if you were neither following them nor trying to stop them, both indicates interest, they would just disappear. Everything that you're not interested in disappears. But whatever you're interested in, it becomes prominent in your awareness. It becomes very strong, powerful in your awareness. It captivates you. So this would be one door, like focus on the gaps in between thoughts. We all have them. Another door could be giving your mind the freedom to think. Let it think. Again, that's another way of expressing that you're not interested in what the mind does. You kind of just let it play. Let's try that right now. Tell your mind, well, think whatever you want. See what it comes up with. What does it say next? Right now, probably most of you are going into this kind of waiting position inside. You're just like waiting, seeing what comes up, what kind of words will come next. And the waiting is also pregnant with awareness. You're knowing, you're looking, you're seeing, right? Now that's the other antidote to thinking. It is seeing directly, seeing clearly. You could also call it listening, right? So you're waiting, listening. Now what will the mind come up with? Let's just wait a little bit. And as you wait, there it is. There is silence. Because now you're not actively trying to fill any gaps or being interested in whatever comes up in the mind, but you're just kind of open, waiting, spacious. You're not in any kind of relationship with the mind that is a conflict kind of relationship. You're not trying to stop the mind, and you're not following the mind. Both activities, stopping and seeking. Like you could try to stop your mind from thinking, or you could seek out thoughts, right? But both are kind of the same thing, really. Both indicate restlessness. They indicate that you're not happy with the way it is. You want something else, or you want what's there to go away, or you want what's not there to come to you, right? All that is restlessness. And as long as you are restless, the mind cannot settle down. When I try to make the water in the bottle still, what do I need to do? How do I need to hold the bottle so that its content becomes still? I'm trying really hard right now to make it still. Will I ever be successful? Why not? Should I hold it differently? Any tips? What should I do? What can I do to this bottle? How can I stop? I'm trying to stop the water from moving. I'm trying really hard. Pardon? I put it down? Let's try that. And does it immediately become still? Look, not really. It's still vibrating, it's still moving. It takes a while for it to become still, right? So the same is true for the mind and its words and its content, emotions, etc. It takes a while. You have to learn to put it down and stop interfering with it, trying to stop it, trying to seek something from it. All that keeps it active, right? So the second door, it's that. When you wait, when you look, when you listen, it's like putting the mind down and just looking at it. You tell it, now go ahead and think. Do something. I'm just watching you, right? And you've all experienced, within the short moments that we did this practice right now, that the mind is much more quiet when you do that. Another door that you could enter is to look directly into thoughts and see what are they made of. Or ask the question, where do these thoughts appear? So do that right now. Where do your thoughts appear? Like, look for the place where your thoughts appear. Can you find anything substantial, solid? No? So are you fighting with things that are not nothing? They're nothings, so to say. Isn't that the case? Yeah, it's like nothing. Why fight? Why try to stop something that's not really there, that doesn't have any real substance? Could thoughts do you any harm if you observe them, if you look at them, come and go, come and go? Will they do you any harm like that? You just see there is a thought, it arises, changes, and passes. How could that harm you? What would you need to stop? Why would you need to stop something like that? It's just nothing, right? So your attitude towards thoughts changes. You see like, wow, it's just nothing. Why do I try to stop it? That way you lose interest in it, and again, you just let it pass. It's not worth the effort for fighting against it, right? You could as well be fighting against wind. Could you? You could be fighting against it. If you would be some kind of mad person that says like this, the wind shouldn't be there, let me fight it away. You could do a whole lot of things. You could build large buildings to block the wind. All this effort for nothing. The wind will just go around it. Right? And in the end, the wind really doesn't care. The wind does what the wind does. So our thoughts are the same. Like, we can make a huge effort to try to fight them away, and it just doesn't work. The fourth possibility is come back to the breath. As soon as you notice that you're getting lost in thinking, back to the breath. You do that 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, again and again, until your mind learns that you have other priorities. Thinking is not your priority. So you keep bringing the mind back to something that obviously is more important for your survival. So the brain wires itself differently according to your needs. It seems like she wants to be with her breath. So then the brain enables you to be with your breath more, and the thinking fades into the background. That's also a possibility. And when you do that, by the way, when you try to focus on the breath, thoughts will come and invade you. In that moment, just know whether you're breathing in or out. Right now, let your mind think, whatever it wants. Let it think. You just do this exercise together. It's very practical. Everything I talk about is always very practical stuff. Let your mind think right now. Whatever it wants to think about. And as your mind thinks and it goes blah, 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 through whatever, ask yourself, are you breathing in or out right now? What happens to the thinking? It immediately goes background, right? You can try that over and over again. You just bring the mind back to the breath. The thinking goes to the background. Breath comes to the foreground. So, like this. You can be aware of your breath even though there are thoughts. But as soon as your awareness with the breath becomes stronger, the thoughts fade. They become less and less important. Another option is to see that thinking is not personal, it is not you. It is just old habits of the brain. The brain just simply keeps producing all kinds of things that it has produced for the past how many years. It's gotten used to producing this kind of, it's like a broken record. But there's nothing personal about it. The voice that's talking in your head is not you. It is just a habit of the brain. That in itself is a huge insight. That is very powerful, if you can truly see that. And I mean, if you feel it with every fiber of your being, if it's not just an intellectual understanding, if it has such an impact that you literally stop suffering your thoughts. You're not a subject of your thoughts anymore. And you're not living your life through a voice in your head anymore. It has to be really powerful. This is a proper insight. Kind of a little enlightenment, if you will. So you see how thoughts come and how they go, whether you want it or not, right? They come and they go. So that shows clearly that they're not yours. If they were yours, you could just tell them, stop. And all the thoughts would go like, yes, ma'am. And then they stop. But they're not yours. How could it be more clear and obvious that they're not yours? You have no control whatsoever over them. They do whatever they want. Very often, the more you try to control them, the worse it gets. Also, that shows you very clearly they're not yours. Thoughts are as much yours than your heartbeat. Are you in control of that? Do you decide when it starts and when it stops? No, right? And another way to have less thoughts or to stop your thoughts, it is your conduct throughout the day. What do you do during the day? Some people, they listen to tons of music. Guess what's in their head? Tons of music. As soon as they go to the retreats, for example, during the first few days, for them it's like driving them insane because they just can't turn off the tunes. There's one tune after another. Tunes that you were listening to when you were 3 years old. Tunes you were listening to when you were 7 years old. And it just suddenly all comes back out. It's almost like the mind is vomiting it all out. It's been carrying all that stuff around, all that motion, that commotion. If you talk a lot with people during your daily life, what do you think will happen in your mind? Oh, there will be a lot of talking, right? Habits, it's just simple as that. It's habits. So if you want your mind to talk a little bit less, try to talk a little bit less during your day. It's a simple ethics, simple morality, a simple kind of, how do you say, training of your conduct. If it is your true goal, if you say, I would like to think less, I would like to truly enter a state of peace, I would like to not lose my energy to incessant words throughout the day, then make an effort to cut unnecessary speech. That's a very good exercise, by the way. Talking only what is true. Talking only what is kind. It's a nice Facebook post. But who really does that? It's very hard. Like cutting all the superfluous talk that we produce every day. So many words, every day. How much of that could you let go of? And what would that do to the quality of your life? Becoming mindful of how you speak. Yeah. By the way, just a little sidetrack. Notice how you're talking to yourself in your own head. What are the topics, the recurring topics, the themes? What is it always about? Isn't it like really similar day after day? the general topics. What does that say about you and your life? How could your life change if your inner talk would change? Would it have an impact on the way you live your life? Oh, you bet. Right now, the way you talk to yourself, who you think you are, and how you regenerate yourself into different personalities from moment to moment, it's everything. It is your life. It is how you move. It is how you talk, what you do, how you think of yourself. All that, it is how you talk to yourself. That's just on a side note. And we can change that. We can make it better. It's one of your great powers. You can make the way you talk to yourself better. You can actually guide yourself, care for yourself, lift yourself up, encourage yourself, etc. Then that would be the same way that you talk to others. It would be encouraging, helpful, meaningful, etc. Another door is to suppress it. Suppress your thoughts. It's kind of very similar to just going back to the breath. It's like suppressing it. While going back to the breath is more like shifting your attention to the breath, suppressing it is like really making a strong effort. It is what you tried. But it is one of the least recommended ways, I think. It's a very weak way, and most people are unable to suppress. They fail to suppress, and then they blame suppression for their failure of suppression. Right? So this is usually not a very good method. But it is legit, and it could be made to work. For a good example of suppression might be for an alcoholic in the first stages of recovery to suppress the urge to drink. So like really cut it off. There's no other way. You just have to suppress. When the urge comes up, you have to suppress the urge. Together with other techniques and methods, of course, that you're using. But suppression is a major one in the fight against addictions, right? So you have to suppress. Suppression also comes in handy, for example, when you have that snappy comment on your lips that you could tell your friend to show them that you're right and that they are wrong. And then not to say that, it's suppression. You're suppressing it. Why? Because you know it has long-term negative consequences. So you keep yourself from getting that little victory in for long-term ruined friendship. You keep it back. Oh, I could be right here. I could show others that I'm victorious and right and amazing, and then they would all have to accept that I've been right all along, and it would be amazing. I could aggrandize myself. I could make myself bigger through this or that. And you don't do it. Some people do it with donations, right? When they give a donation, they do it like extra noisy, so to say, so that everyone sees that they give a lot of money or something like that. Others do it with a very noisy motorbike. They stand at the junction and go, row, row, row. It's basically just saying, look, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. You might be wired like that, like to show your attributes. Could you suppress that? And why would you suppress that? Maybe through your actions there are negative repercussions for yourself. So it might make sense to suppress some of your behaviors. So particularly those behaviors that get us into trouble repeatedly. Suppressing the urge to go back to sleep when you just made an appointment with yourself that tomorrow I'll get up at 5 and exercise before I go to work. And then it's 5 a.m. in the morning and you're like, maybe I'll just go back to sleep, and it's so nice and cozy. Let me just turn around and snooze 5 minutes more, and you're kind of almost going back onto it. And then you suppress that urge. You suppress the impulse. Why would you do it? To keep the appointment that you made with yourself. You're not disappointing yourself again. You do what you set out to do. You do what you say that you would do. Your words and your actions are in harmony. You have integrity. And by the end of the day, you go, wow, I'm proud of myself, I did well. All thanks to suppression. So suppression is not a bad thing. At least not always. There are cases where suppression is bad, of course. It's never just black or white, you know. But there are cases where it's really good. Should be practiced, it's beneficial. So as you see, there are a lot of doors that could help you to enter a state that is free from thought. But I think that the primary principle that is underneath all of those doors is it's losing interest in the fight against thoughts. You're losing interest in thoughts. It's like, yeah, whatever, let them float around. Who cares? When you go onto the beach and you read a good book, do you have to fight off the people that are next to you that are talking? And do you have to go to each one of them and say, could you please stop talking? Can you please go somewhere else? You're disturbing me reading my book. You know, do you have to kind of block out everything so you can read your book? No, right? You just read your book. And if the story is captivating, it's natural that you stop hearing the others. They just disappear, right? You all know that. They just disappear. And when they disappear, then you're peacefully reading your book. So what is it in the book? But if the book is, let's say, a study book, that you really don't want to read, can you do the same? No? Like you want to do anything but read that book? I remember that from my school times. It was a horrific effort for me to to read those books. And so I remember actually I would go to the toilet because my mom would be around. I would go to the toilet with my book, letting my mom see that I go into the toilet with my book just to sleep in the toilet with my book. But I would go into the toilet with my book, so it would take a long time so that she thinks, wow, he's so diligent. He even takes his learning materials onto the loo and keeps learning there. Wow. When in reality I was just pretending and just going to sleep in there. It was making me so tired reading all that. So reading a book like this, you will be all over the place mentally. Just not with the book, but reading or watching an amazing movie or hearing a captivating story, you forget thinking about yourself. Like right now, none of you is thinking. Have you noticed? You're not talking to yourselves in your own head right now. Why not? Because you're listening. So what makes your breath worth listening? That's another door, the final one. What makes your breath worth listening to? It is when it becomes pleasurable, when it's really nice, when you breathe in a way that feels really good. And when you train that, when you make it a point, when you fulfill yourself with your breath, then thoughts disappear. You lose all interest because the breath is so nice. You have nothing to talk about like that. Same way. There's more doors and variations. And as you practice, you will find them out one by one. And then you can use one at this day, next at this day, and always helps you, and you get adapt, you get skillful with this. You can use it just right. The right door at the right time. But is there a shortcut? Yes. Yes. Just be aware. That's the shortcut. You're either aware or you're thinking. There's no two-way possibility here. You can't be aware and thinking at the same time. You either know, another word for it is listen, or you talk. So here's measure. Are you truly aware? You should be empty. Completely empty. No thoughts, no content, nothing. Just pure potentiality. As long as there is still content appearing, you're not fully aware, right? So a 100% commitment to awareness is the shortcut. Nisargadatta Maharaj, his shortcut, his practice was just to refuse thinking. Any thought that came to him, he would just refuse. He would just refuse it. That was his practice. He just stopped thinking like that. Just no more interest in it. Just throw it all away. Do you dare to do that? Do you dare to be that naked? You know, it's one of the worst addictions that we have, is our addiction to thought. Who would you be without the voice in your head? Do you dare to drop that? That's a big one. That's why people actually keep thinking, because they think they somehow need that little voice to live their life. They haven't realized yet that they are life. They're not doing life. But the voice suggests you that you're somehow, life is something that's in your possession and you must do it right. So much stress. Yeah. So that will be the shortcut. If that's not for you, then there's so many other doors. Play with them. You want to enjoy your meditation. You don't do it so it's quickly done. You're quickly done with it, right? When you're listening to a beautiful piece of music, are you looking for a shortcut to get to the end of the track? No? How come? You enjoy. Let that be your guiding principle in meditation. How can you enjoy this moment? How can you enjoy your breath? And your problem is solved there. Okay? Good. Yeah, I think that's good enough for today.